the Regnum Christi charism was part of our life and family too. Like it motivated all of us to see the kids become so in love with the faith through ECYD. It's
and then my mom became like a K4J guru and everything, and everywhere I went, they're like, "Oh, you're Kathleen's son," and everything. I was like,
K4J granny.
That's my mom. Now she gets it the other way now, and they're like,
now I'm Father Ronald's
tables
mom.
have turned. But yeah, so what about
so I just want to, like, the experience of Regnum Christi really is what drew you in a way, right? Helped draw you toward Christ in a vocation, right? Like that experience, like having a mission, knowing that you were created for something great, having the charism kind of lived in your life is really what helped you most. And
all of those things, but it's every element of the charism, because it's the 5 big elements. But the spiritual life, I always said that it was more like the mission, the apostolate, the apostolic life that drew me to be a priest. But thinking about it again, there were moments in my life, encounters with Christ, that were facilitated by a Regnum Christi environment or whatever, an adoration. Things where there were powerful experiences of Jesus Christ in my spiritual life. I think without those two, like if I didn't have wasn't absolutely convinced of my love for Jesus Christ, those other things wouldn't have happened. The missionary drive wouldn't be there. So it starts with the spiritual life first, and then moves on. And don't think like I was.
None of us are very pious.
Yeah.
We don't have piety in our.
So you never. She's messing around because she's super holy and always praying and everything. But it was never like I wasn't the guy in high school you were gonna catch like for 30 minutes by myself in adoration just for the fun of it. I was playing sports and sneaking around. I hope Father Stephen Riley's not listening to this. We're sneaking around under the tunnels at the Highlands, just take some cookies from the kitchen in high school. We had our ways around. We're normal. I was a normal kid, but yeah, it was definitely all the little experiences. But you know what I think is really important for me, and I think that in my experience working with boys now too, when you pull them out of their ordinary life or their ordinary circumstances, their familiar routine and everything, and give them an experience where a place somewhere else where they experience Jesus Christ, they be apostles, they give Jesus Christ to others in some way. If they are called to the charism, they hear it there in that environment every single time. I work now, I'm the rector at Sacred Heart Apostolic School, and these are boys that are open to a vocation to the priesthood, right? And they've come from amazing families, but the origin of every single one of these boys that studies here or that even considers it is in the Eucharist, almost always in the Eucharist, or in a relationship with another kid that they find charity. But what they feel, they experience is a draw, a pull, like something that is telling them that there's more for them that God has in store for them, and they need to figure it out. The same thing I experienced as a kid was I'm drawn something more. I'm made for more. What is it? And I gotta figure it out. That's what ECYD does. That's what the movement does. And I think of your own calling and when you first discovered it. Like, what about you? Tell them like when you first heard about it and realized what Regnum Christi was doing.
Well, one of the experiences I had was through Father and his brothers. I watched how they worked with youth, but I had an openness. I remember talking to Father Edward, about what did his mom do? Because his mom has 3 legionaries.
Ordained by St. John Paul II.
Yeah, and 1 Dominican sister, and I don't know. I had a love of the church, a deep love of the church, that's for sure. But I went to him and says, well, like, I just wanted to make sure that I raised my kids like that they loved the church. That was it. I was just in love with Jesus and the church. So when I asked him that, he said, I think if you were to ask my mom what to do, she would tell you to be generous. And I thought, darn, I thought it was going to be like
Put a statue of
put a
Mary.
statue of Mary on the, yeah, do something a little practical detail and it's all going to work out. But be generous. Wow. That kind of guided us. Those two words kind of guided us, because we were like, okay, we have to open ourselves up to the fact that our children are, and I remember when God did this to me in a moment with Father Ronald's vocation, because I was praying and I said, I was trying to do something wonderful. So I set up a Mary room and we were praying together as a family in that room once in a while. And I used to pray when they would go off to school. And I said to God, what is it that I haven't been generous with? What is it that I'm holding back? And he said, your kids. I want your children. And I said, the first thing, and this is humiliating, but the first thing that I thought of said to him was, what are you going to do with them? Like, what are you going to do? Like, as if God would have a plan that was less than mine, right? Like somehow, like that he wanted something terrible. And I remember being kind of embarrassed at that thought. And I just said to him, I'm sorry, like you love him more than I do. I have to let go a little bit. Trust him that he's got something marvelous planned for each one of my kids. So that letting go again, like, and saying that, that really helped me a lot with, then I would just say, if I kind of made that my priority, like, right? Like,
well, I asked
retreats and all that stuff.
I asked my mom and dad, like, what did you guys, because parents were asking me, what should we do with our kids? And I asked my mom, what would you do? And she said, because she never once told me, you should go to seminary and check it out. You should be a priest or whatever. If she would have said that, I probably would have been turned the opposite direction. Actually, the only time I felt aversion to the vocation was actually a priest that pulled me aside and said, you should be at the seminary over here. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna not go to that seminary. And yeah. So maybe it's whatever, but that's a reality. But what she said was that we made sacrifices of time and money to put you into allow you to be in places and circumstances where God could call you.
Yeah, that was huge. Like that generosity. The only thing we did that we could think of was made ourselves available to what God offered.
And so listen, we're on basically my dad's teaching salary or whatever, but I saw Pope John Paul II in 1995. Well, 93 we had already gone, but that was right before we met the movement. In 95 in New York City with Father Gomez, 97 to Paris and World Youth Day with Father Edward Hopkins, and to London for a mission. I was going to every year to conventions in Wisconsin for ECYD convention and Young Regnum Christi convention. We go to Cheshire once or twice a year, New Hampshire once or twice a year. We had a weekend camp, whatever retreat up in 2 hours away north in Michigan where Father Gomez was doing stuff. And it was constant. I look back and I'm like, man, like they actually did a lot. Like those are big sacrifices. We sacrificed a lot of things in order to make that happen. But if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't had those experiences, I don't think I would have had the same drive and desire to do what God wanted me to do with my life. Like
yeah, I really think it was that we viewed I became excited to see what God would do. I was like excited to know, like, what is he going to do with each, and still have some more kids at home, right? Like, what is he doing with their lives that's going to be so much better than what I could have ever imagined? And so when he was very excited about those things, we never pressured you into going to any of that stuff, right? But I think this is the thing I want to say is, like, I'm section director right now of Atlanta section, right? And I keep saying to people, like, we have to make vocation like part of the fabric of who we are. Like, this is This is not a topic we discuss once a year. It's not a booth at the side of the event we're planning. This is our mission, is to help others discover their own mission, right?
Yeah,
That's our whole mission.
And I'm the oldest kid. We have 7 in the family. We had 4 for a long time, and then there was a long gap, and then the 3 more. So the youngest is still 17, 18 now, still at home. And I'm the only one that, is a priest today. So it's not like, you were running a priest factory or something, like putting out priests. But I was called, and there was an atmosphere in which I could hear the call. And all of my siblings have had that. They've all had that, yet all of them have felt called to something else, right? So there's no reason to be afraid. Like, if you have an openness to the vocation in your family, if you pray for vocations, if you tell your kids and pray together, like, God has a plan for you, discovering that plan is the greatest adventure of your life. And that's what life is all about. You're called to be in heaven, and God has a special path for you to get there and for you to get other people there. You tell them that in no way is that conditioning them.
Right.
You're just opening their minds to the fact
You're
that there's a
actually
reason to
freeing
be on
them.
earth.
You're actually freeing them, because now no one's telling them from outside. The society's always trying to take away our freedom, constant. And so if you just tell them, no, don't listen to that. You're free. You can. God has a plan that is something that you can. And so anyway, you are a happy priest, right?
I am.
A joyful
Thanks, Peter.
priest.